Don DeLillo's White Noise, 1985, is a postmodern masterpiece that explores themes of media saturation, consumerism, death, and technology in late 20th century American life. Through satirical and philosophical prose, the novel dissects how modern society has become overwhelmed by information, distraction, and the looming presence of mortality. Set in the fictional town of Blacksmith, the novel centers on Jack Gladney, a professor of Hitler studies at a liberal arts college, and his blended family. Jack and his wife Babette are preoccupied by a fear of death, a theme that surfaces repeatedly as they navigate their everyday lives. The narrative is split into three parts: Waves and Radiation, the Airborne Toxic Event, and Dylarama, each of which deepens the novel's philosophical engagement with death, technology, and the simulation of reality. DeLillo's novel is a cornerstone of postmodern American literature, filled with dark humor, ironic detachment, and a profound meditation on what it means to live in a world where noise, literal and figurative, drowns out the real. Part 1. Waves and Radiation. The novel opens with Jack Gladney observing the ritualized arrival of students at the college each autumn. Jack is the founder and chair of the Hitler Studies Department, despite not knowing German. His personal life includes his fourth wife, Babette, and their children from various marriages: Heinrich, Steffi, Denise, and Wilder. Jack and Babette are unusually close, often asking each other who will die first. Both are deeply afraid of death, and their dread is exacerbated by the world around them: television broadcasts, supermarket announcements, background noise. Their lives are filled with banal but symbolically rich interactions: shopping, eating, watching TV. We're introduced to Murray J. Siskind, a former sportswriter turned academic, who is working on a cultural study of Elvis Presley and acts as both a friend and philosophical foil to Jack. Heinrich, Jack's teenage son, engages in cryptic debates about logic and reality, emphasizing the novel's concern with epistemological uncertainty. Jack's sense of control is destabilized when he learns that Babette has been taking a mysterious drug, Dylarama, which he suspects is related to her anxiety about death. Part 2. The Airborne Toxic Event. A train accident outside of Blacksmith releases a cloud of toxic chemicals into the air, referred to as an airborne toxic event. The town is evacuated. Jack and his family flee with the rest of the population and take refuge in a shelter. During the chaos, Jack is briefly exposed to the cloud and is told that the chemical has entered his bloodstream and may eventually cause death, though no one can say when or how. This brush with death intensifies Jack's existential crisis. He obsesses over mortality and starts to notice changes in how people behave after the event. Some become more paranoid, others oddly serene. The event functions as both literal disaster and metaphor for the pervasive fear and uncertainty that defines contemporary life. After the crisis subsides, the family returns home, but Jack's fear of death becomes more acute, and Babette begins to withdraw emotionally. Jack discovers that Dylarama is an experimental drug meant to eliminate fear of death. Babette confesses that she was given the drug in exchange for sex with a man she calls Mr. Gray, who works with the drug company. Part 3. Dylarama. Jack's obsession turns violent. He obtains a gun and seeks out Mr. Gray, whose real name is Willie Mink, at a motel in a desolate part of town. Mink, now psychologically unwell from overuse of Dylarama, mutters nonsense and watches TV commercials on a loop. Jack shoots him but then hesitates and attempts to care for his wounds instead of fleeing. Eventually, both men end up in a hospital run by German-speaking nuns. The novel ends with a surreal yet strangely hopeful tone. Jack returns home, and the family resumes its routines. The final pages focus on Wilder, the youngest child, riding his tricycle across a busy road and surviving. Jack reflects on the importance of minor moments and rituals, the white noise of life, as a buffer against existential dread. Character analysis. Jack Gladney. Jack is the novel's anti-hero, an intellectual who is both authoritative and insecure. He fears death, obsesses over appearances, and performs his identity as a scholar. His creation of the Hitler Studies Department represents his desire for control over meaning, yet he cannot even speak German, highlighting the artificiality of academic authority. Jack's descent into obsession and eventual violence reflects his internal collapse. His exposure to the toxic cloud, discovery of Babette's secret, and murder attempt all strip away his illusion of control. Ultimately, Jack embodies the postmodern condition. Intelligent but alienated, surrounded by information but starved of meaning. Babette Gladney. Babette represents the emotional core of the family. Her fear of death is palpable and sincere, and she copes by reading to the elderly, teaching posture classes, and secretly taking Dylarama. Her confession of the affair with Mr. Gray is heartbreaking, not because of infidelity, but because of her desperation for peace. She is vulnerable, honest, and human in a way that contrasts with Jack's cerebral detachment. Murray Siskind. Murray is a cultural theorist and DeLillo's vehicle for philosophical commentary. He represents the academic absurdity of postmodern America, proposing, for example, that Elvis and Hitler can be understood through similar cultural lenses. He encourages Jack to act out his fear through violence, making him a dangerous intellectual provocateur. Yet Murray is also earnest and idealistic, believing in the power of the supermarket as a sacred space. Heinrich Gladney. Heinrich is a 14-year-old contrarian and budding philosopher who constantly questions reality. His dialogues with Jack showcase the epistemological skepticism that pervades the novel. He distrusts observable facts and believes in the instability of truth. Heinrich represents a new generation that navigates a world of simulations with irony and indifference. Major themes and analysis. 1. Death and mortality. The most pervasive theme in White Noise is the fear of death. Both Jack and Babette are consumed by their dread of dying, a fear that intensifies with the airborne toxic event and the revelations surrounding Dylarama. Death in the novel is not noble or tragic. It's banal, statistical, and ever-present. DeLillo critiques how contemporary society deals with death, not by confronting it, but by burying it in noise. TV ads, supermarket rituals, and academic jargon all function as distractions. The result is a culture that suppresses death so thoroughly that it becomes more terrifying in its invisibility. 2. Media saturation and simulation. Throughout the novel, characters are constantly surrounded by white noise, TVs, radios, public announcements, and consumer jargon. The media becomes a substitute for reality, blurring the line between life and simulation. In one scene, Babette's image appears on a television screen, causing Jack to feel more connected to her broadcasted image than to her physical presence. The airborne toxic event is a perfect example of how media transforms disaster into spectacle. People learn about the crisis through screens rather than experience, and the narration is filtered through newscasters and vague scientific jargon. DeLillo shows that we live in a hyper-real society, where simulations of events often carry more emotional weight than the events themselves. 3. Consumerism and spiritual emptiness. The supermarket is one of the most symbolic settings in White Noise. Jack and Babette find comfort in the routines of shopping, the predictable layout of aisles, the brightly colored products. Consumerism becomes a surrogate religion, offering order, ritual, and distraction. But this comfort is artificial. The supermarket offers no answers to existential questions, it merely displaces fear with consumption. Murray calls the supermarket a temple, and DeLillo uses this setting to critique a society that replaces spirituality with commerce. 4. Technology and language. The novel is obsessed with the language of science and medicine, especially when it is used to obscure rather than clarify. After Jack is exposed to the chemical niodine D, he's given a vague prognosis by a computer program. The language is cold, abstract, and emotionally useless. This critique extends to academic language, particularly in Jack's role as a professor. The absurdity of Hitler studies is never resolved. It's presented as an emblem of how language and knowledge can become detached from moral or existential significance. 5. The breakdown of meaning. Ultimately, white noise is about the postmodern breakdown of meaning. Words don't signify what they once did. Institutions don't provide stability. The novel's style, flat, ironic, filled with repetitions, mirrors this collapse. Even Dylarama, the drug designed to eliminate the fear of death, is a symbol of futility. It cannot change reality, it only numbs perception. Jack's attempt to murder Mr. Gray also fails to produce any catharsis or resolution. In the end, the characters return to their routines, unchanged but somehow more aware of the emptiness they inhabit. Literary style and structure. 1. Postmodern irony. DeLillo uses irony not just as a stylistic choice but as a worldview. Characters often say profound things in flat, detached tones. Academic disciplines are parodied, e.g., Hitler studies, and serious fears are rendered in banal phrases. This irony reveals the absurdity of modern life, where sincerity feels impossible and even catastrophe becomes boring. 2. Fragmented narrative. The novel is episodic rather than linear. It proceeds through scenes and digressions, often abandoning plot momentum for philosophical exploration. This mirrors the fragmentation of modern experience, where coherent narratives are replaced by information overload. 3. Symbolic settings. The supermarket represents false comfort, ritual, and consumer distraction. The college mocks academia's detachment from reality. The hospital and motel reflect the breakdown of traditional institutions. These settings reinforce the novel's critique of how place and meaning have been decoupled. Ending and final reflections. The ending of White Noise is deliberately ambiguous. After all the chaos, environmental disaster, existential breakdown, and attempted murder, the Gladneys return to their routines. Wilder rides his tricycle into traffic and miraculously survives, suggesting either divine protection or the resilience of absurd life. Jack's final reflections in the supermarket blend the mystical and the mundane. He marvels at the barcodes, the subliminal organization of products, and the comfort of routines. Death still lurks, but it has been absorbed into the background hum, the white noise of modern life. Conclusion. Don DeLillo's White Noise is a profound and unsettling exploration of what it means to live in a society saturated by information, consumerism, and distraction. Through his ironic prose, fragmented narrative, and symbolic settings, DeLillo reveals a world where people flee from death not by confronting it but by drowning it in static. The novel is both satire and elegy, mocking the absurdities of modern life while mourning its spiritual and emotional poverty. Jack and Babette's fears are not unusual or exaggerated. They are the fears of all who live in an age where meaning is elusive and death is the only certainty. In White Noise, DeLillo captures the strange, terrifying beauty of a world where everything is communicated but nothing is understood, and where human connection is both desperately needed and endlessly deferred.